This podcast is recorded on stolen and unceded Aboriginal land.
We acknowledge the First Nations and elders of this country and join their calls for justice. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land.
You know what? I think that shirt makes you look particularly gay. Like, you don't normally look super gay. I think it is giving gay.
This is bullying in the workplace.
Do you think so, though?
I don't know. I guess whatever I'm wearing is pretty gay. What with me being gay all the time?
Sure. Oh, yeah. Let's deconstruct what is gay. Come on.
What is gay? Do you think it looks
What
good?
looks
Are you trying
gay?
to tell
What
me
does
that I
that
look
mean,
good?
Emerald? I'll tell you what looks gay. That shirt.
Do you like it or do you not like it? I can't tell.
I can't tell. To me, it kind of looks like you're wearing a flag a little bit. I thought it was like a flag shirt. And to be clear, there's an L in that letter. I'm not using a slur. Yeah, there's an L in that word when I say flag.
Jesus
Christ.
Oh God! All
Yeah, I
right.
don't know.
Is all this going in? Do you want this in? Do you want this into the podcast?
Should we just replace the cold open? No, do your thing.
Okay.
Do your thing.
Karen Barlow from the Saturday paper sent out a survey to all the new members of the Labor one-party state that we live under now in Australia, all the new Labor members and senators who are going to make up the new parliament.
Yeah.
And basically a list of questions, basic surveys, just to get to know them, find out exactly who's going to be ruling over us. And some of the answers were quite interesting, I thought.
Like a giant icebreaker that we're all subjected to.
Yes. Yeah, I'm sure they're
Basically.
doing trust
Okay.
exercises and stuff, yeah. They make a big point of Albanese's victory delivered the first caucus majority for the left faction since the national groupings were organized in the 1970s. The left are in control, Emerald. Are you excited about this? This is huge.
As a leftist, I feel like I should be excited. We're going to get social democracy.
One Labor source says, people think, oh, it is such a blessing to have that many numbers. No, it's not. No, because if you've got so many numbers, people start to get sloppy. Politicians, they're all narcissists, and they all want to stand out. And when you've got 94 of you, it's very, very hard to stand out unless you do something that is disruptive.
Jesus Christ, these people are so rotten in the brain, hey?
So we haven't even started, all right? We haven't even started the new parliament, and already people in the Labor Party saying, there's too many fucking members here. We've actually won too hard.
There's too many of
and all
us.
all my fucking comrades are going to stab me in the back, these pieces of fucking shit.
Steak too juicy, lobster too buttery.
But here are the details from specific members that I thought was of interesting. Dr. Michelle Anandaraja, of course, the former member for Higgins. Higgins was abolished as a seat. She's ended up in the Senate as a senator for Victoria, my state. She's a Victorian right faction. Asked what union she's affiliated with, Dr. Anandaraja said nil. She said nil union.
Nil.
Nil. None of that, thanks.
Nil. Such a funny thing to say.
Are your children in a public, private, or independent school? They're in private schools. How many houses do you own? 4. 3 more are listed under Anandaraja's spouse.
Union nil. Houses 4.
What are the issues you would like to champion during the term? Sustainability of our health system, make Australia a biotech giant, and GLP-1s, weight loss drugs, affordable.
What? That's the big dream. Okay. That's the vision.
Yeah.
That's this is why I'm in politics. Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
I thought this was interesting. Claire Clutterham for the seat of Sturt was asked what are the issues you would like to champion during the first term. She said growing and upskilling South Australia's workforce to support the defence industry, reduction of bullying and harassment in schools, and addressing domestic violence. So violence and bullying, very bad. But we also
less
need
violence
to upskill.
at home and in schools.
Yes.
More overseas. Yeah.
The defence industry. We do need to keep making weapons. It's very key. Matt Gregg is the new member of the seat of Deakin. Union. And so they just sent out the survey and they just published the responses like exactly what they sent back, basically. So this guy just didn't answer some questions. So when it comes to union, no response. Religion, no response. Are your kids in public or private school? No response. And then what are the issues you would like to champion during the term? Boosting economic productivity and pursuing meaningful law reform.
Wow. And this guy's name is what, sorry? Matt Gregg. This dude, what a dude. Just a guy. Just a guy that's a politician. and wants to boost economic productivity and pursue meaningful law reform. Matt Gregg.
He's filling this out. Better not be too specific with the kind of things I want to champion. I'll keep it vague like my name. Matt Gregg.
Yeah.
Meaningful law
Yeah.
reform, please. Great.
Hmm.
Last few ones here. Madonna Jarrett, of course, the new member for the seat of Brisbane. How many houses do you own? None, apparently.
I'm suspicious. But
Madonna Jarrett is renting, is out here renting.
as a director at Deloitte, but okay. Wow.
Former director of Deloitte.
So good to have a
yes.
renter still in the seat.
Sarah Whitty, the new member for Melbourne, has 4 houses, which is pretty interesting.
Oh, good. So good.
Renee Coffey, the new member for Griffith, when asked how many houses do you own, she wrote 4 between me and my new husband. We're in the process of selling one.
Oh, wow.
I know.
Thanks. Good. She's like, if anyone's interested, we've got an inspection coming up on Saturday the 13th. So
This is in some other responses as well. Someone was like, "Oh, one of our houses will be on the market soon." Like people,
don't
just
worry,
literally
we're
listing
actively
their properties
engaged
for sale.
in real estate turnover. Like we are flipping. Fuck me.
And final note at the end of the article: Dorinda Cox did not complete the survey. Unfortunately, I'm not sure if we got
Labor's
that
newest.
in her time or she didn't get a chance.
She's so busy.
Yeah.
Hmm.
How did you get into politics? This is one of the questions.
Yeah,
How did you get into politics,
get
Dorinda?
into
What were the sort of the
politics?
principles that inspired you?
Hmm.
What are the issues that you'd like to champion during this term?
Anything? Any details?
I guess we'll see.
We're kind of lucky that it's Superman at all. You would have thought by now the studios were so depleted in their ideas that we would have had ourselves force-fed an ethnically diverse female Superman. And that if you didn't just love that, then you were obviously the kind of bigot who should be arrested by as many police officers as a local force can bring up.
We're stuck with the hosts of Chapo Shithouse podcast.
Serious danger to Australia.
Fellow Australians, this is Serious Danger, a podcast about green politics in Australia. I'm Emerald Moon, that's Tom Ballard. Hi, Tom.
Bonjour, everyone, from Montreal.
Ah, ça
Canada.
va?
What?
Ça va? Do they say ça va in Montreal, or do they only say that? Isn't that like a how you going? I don't know. I don't speak French.
Probably. I don't know what these people are talking about. The other day, a guy pushed past me and he literally said, "Excusez-moi."
Oh,
And I was like, wow.
and you're like, oh,
They really are saying that
excusez-moi.
out here.
Oh, that's very good. Look, this is a podcast about green politics in Australia, but it is not an official Greens Party podcast. It's produced by Michael the Griffin. Tom is in Montreal. I am in Manjin on Yagara and Turrbal country. It's the end of NAIDOC week, and there's been a fair bit of news spinning around. There's been the coronial inquest findings handed down into the death of Kumanjayi Walker. There's been another Warlpiri man has died in custody in a week where we're meant to be celebrating First Nations culture and history.
Yeah,
It is,
fucking
of
hell.
course, overshadowed by the enduring wounds of colonisation. So, yes, just acknowledging that in particular this week. This week on the show, we are discussing the threats to Australia's Pharmaceutical Benefits Scheme, the PBS, cheap medicines from the American Big Pharma industry. And we ask the question, lobbyists, do we need them?
Do we need him? You know, are you familiar with Carl Pilkington, the guy that used to do podcasts with Ricky Gervais and Stephen Merchant? Does that ring a bell?
No.
He used to have a segment on his radio show called "Do We Need 'Em?" where he'd just run through various animals from Animal Kingdom,
Oh,
and talk about how he doesn't think they are of any use anymore. And so, like slugs, do we need them, for example?
yeah, I mean, koalas would not fare too well, would they?
I think we need all God's creatures. I don't think we need lobbyists, though.
Do you think we need genetically modified mosquitoes? I've been looking into this because they want to import some into Queensland and people are upset. That's just, for anyone who's interested, go check out genetically modified mosquitoes.
Nice.
Recommendation from me. Look, we have some new subscribers to our Patreon, patreon.com/Serious Danger AU. That is where people can sign up, just $3 a month, and you get access to an extra bonus episode every couple of weeks. You get access to a little community. You can comment on things. And most importantly, you help support the show and pay Mike's wages, allow us to keep it running. People who have signed up in the last week, Len, Brent, and Lachlan, thank you. Thank you for joining the Danger Dog community. You will be enjoying access, I'm sure, to our latest Patreon episode, finishing Inside the Greens Chapter 9, talking about the Gillard minority government, the Malaysian solution, controversy around BDS, and Bob Brown retiring. Tom, do you want to give us a quick update before we get into the meat of the show? Obviously, checking on how Hannah Thomas, the former Greens candidate for Grayndler, who was allegedly assaulted by police at a protest for Palestine and injured her eye. How's she going? I assume the New South Wales police have, turned around and said, we're so very sorry. We will be supporting you now and we will
Yes.
never do it again.
And Free Palestine. I think they'll come out with a statement
And Free
to
Palestine.
officially endorse that position.
Wow.
Yeah, no, we talked about this on the show last week, of course. Hannah Thomas seems to be doing great. Like, she's got some fantastic photos being taken, little glamorous shots of her looking pensively out a window.
These.
She is standing. Yeah, she said she's standing strong. She's still posing on media saying, "Hey, everybody, get out, stay protesting," and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But an update on the charges specifically: New South Wales Police will drop some of the charges laid against former Greens candidate Hannah Thomas after a review found officers incorrectly sought to use extraordinary emergency powers introduced to quell major riots. Now, again, as discussed, Hannah Thomas, quite a small person, in no way a physical threat to any police officer whatsoever. Has suffered a very serious eye injury. Again, we still don't know, could well lose sight for the rest of her life, for God's sakes. But yes, probably don't need to use powers designed to quell major riots in order to arrest her. Instead, she's going to be facing a more standard charge of failing to comply with the move on direction, along with the existing charge of hindering police. Court documents obtained by the Herald revealed that unlike the 4 others arrested at the protest, Thomas was charged under an emergency power known as Part 6A, which requires authorization by an assistant commissioner or higher to be used. Those same powers were used during the protest outside the Sydney Opera House in 2023, which again, gives the police officers the powers to try and disperse massive crowds. Police have not explained why the Part 6A charge was laid against Hannah Thomas.
Great.
So
not quite. Yeah.
wonderful accountability
Yes.
there. Yeah.
Yes, protect and serve. Thank you so much.
Thanks, pigs.
Thanks, pigs. As always, oink oink.
On a momento, fellas.
Officer Koharski, how's it going?
Fine.
Say, I smell bacon. Does anyone else smell bacon?
Yeah, I definitely smell a pork product of some type.
Now, in the news this week, fears are swirling, I would say, around Australians' access to cheap medicines on kind of 2 fronts, but both related to Trump and the US. So this week, Trump imposed or announced that he would be imposing another round of tariffs, potentially including a 200% tax on pharmaceutical imports. This is what we were kind of worried about when the tariff stuff first started happening, was more about pharmaceutical industry tariffs. And this would be particularly considered a retaliatory strike against Australia's Pharmaceutical Benefits Scheme, or our PBS. Now, first question, Tom, should we be worried about the tariffs in particular?
Well, gosh, very hard to tell, of course. Trump has
Yeah.
imposed so many tariffs,
Always
then
vague.
immediately lifted them.
Yeah.
He claims that they are, a negotiating, bargaining tactic or what have you. I mean, I'm not particularly worried that the Australian government wouldn't put up a very big fight, because they know how politically toxic the idea is that American pharmaceutical companies threatening our ability to access cheap medicines is. We've seen the same thing with the NHS in the UK. Yeah, people really like socialized medicine where they have it, because it
Pretty hard to
puts
dismantle.
people's healthcare above profits. Yeah, we quite like that, and so any threats to that will be fought pretty vigorously with the sitting government. But I certainly don't underestimate the American pharmaceutical industry lobby's power and commitment to trying to rip us all off and fuck us over. Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah, it's one of those things, socialized medicine, one of those things that, like, obviously to win when you don't have it in a modern economy, modern society like the US, seems really fucking hard. But once you've got it, to dismantle it, like political poison, which is why, of course, from the moment that there was any suggestion that tariffs could come into play with the US, and would the PBS be on the table in part of negotiations with the US, the government has been crystal clear, ruling out any changes to the PBS, and the opposition, the LNP, have matched that as well. They've said, no, we're not going to negotiate on the PBS. Albanese said at one point, quote, "The Pharmaceutical Benefits Scheme is a part of who we are as Australians, and we will always stand up for it." The thing about the impact of tariffs on the pharmaceutical industry, I know, like, the US, as I understand it, is the biggest export market for Australian pharmaceutical industry. We exported some $2.2 billion in pharmaceuticals to the US last year. So it's our third biggest export market. But one interesting thing I noticed, and I guess this isn't necessarily relevant in this particular, like when we're talking about the economic impacts or how this might affect markets globally, but it's not necessarily medicines that we're exporting. It's mostly blood products. Did you know that? Have you heard this?
Ugh.
Yeah. I don't know what that. I don't know. I don't know
Gross.
how things
Like plasma
work.
and stuff.
I think so. Yeah. I think a lot of it is like plasma and that stuff that they need. I think CSL does a lot of that. So anyway, that's a little tidbit. But yeah, so more than the tariffs, perhaps more concerning from what I understand is the threat of this most favored nation policy that Trump has also been pushing. So this was included in his executive order back in May, which says that the US should be paying no more for medicines than the lowest price paid by peer nations. So initially it's like, wow, that's so great. He's going to do something about how fucking expensive medicines are in the US. They're fixing the industry, right? Isn't this good news?
Yeah, that sounds really, really good. I mean, we've heard, again, America, the richest country in the world, where insulin for people suffering diabetes is like insanely expensive, right? Like the prices for insulin have shot up all over the place. So yeah, I guess sounds like Donald Trump's really coming to the rescue here. That's great.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, I'm going to quiz you on a couple of these because I was looking into this. Just to illustrate how fucked the US market is, for example, how much do you think the cholesterol-lowering drug Lipitor can cost in the US, Tom?
Oh,
No
God.
Googling.
I don't know. I feel like once I find this out, my own
Your
cholesterol or my own
Yeah, I think you're
heart rate
thinking
is gonna,
blood
like, go
pressure.
through.
But anyway,
gonna
your
spike or something.
cholesterol probably won't just
Blood pressure, yeah, that one.
spontaneously
I am not a
spike.
doctor.
Anyway,
I cannot stress this enough. I'm not a doctor. Yeah.
yeah, so it can cost like $2,000.
Fuck.
$2,000. Okay, but what about autoimmune drug Humira? Humira? Take a punt.
$4,000.
$11,000, Tom.
Oh, that's too many
$4,000 is
dollars.
how much you'd pay for sildenafil, also known as Viagra.
Oh, okay. Well, now we're getting serious because that's an important life-saving medicine that everybody needs.
Now that's exactly right. But yeah, these are drugs that you would pay way less for in Australia. I think there was a recent report that showed that US drug prices are on average about 370% higher than in Australia, about 278% above the OECD average. Seems like a big part of this is in 2003 because in 2003, George Bush signed legislation that expanded Medicare benefits to include prescription drugs, but as part of that, said that the government is prevented from negotiating prices at all with drug companies. So it's a really good system.
Now, to be fair, Americans are very healthy and they're doing very well in the health stakes, and there are
Yes.
no issues
We
with
should
them
be looking
accessing,
to
and like they're
what they're doing.
doing a fantastic job in terms of
Yeah,
health
yeah.
outcomes. So, maybe the system does work. We should keep that in mind.
Maybe the system does work. Look, clearly not. The system is obviously cooked. And it seems like, as with everything, Trump's gone to the election going, I'm going to fix cost of living. I'm going to make everything better. And has probably told Americans that he's going to lower the price of drugs in that country, but without doing the thing that we know would actually be needed, which is, a socialized Medicare public health system. And yes, government intervention into prices. And so he proposes this most favored nation policy. US doesn't pay more than peer nations. The industry, however, not so ready to be fixed. The industry, obviously, pharmaceutical industry, believe it or not, doesn't want people to be paying less to them. They want to be maximizing profit. You'll be devastated to learn. I'm so sorry, Tom. So the Saturday paper has reported on the fact that with this kind of in the ether, the US hasn't added Australia to that basket of peer nations yet, but they could unilaterally at any point. And while that is kind of on the horizon, drug companies have already stopped listing new medicines on the PBS in Australia, stopped trying to register them with us, while they just like wait to see if the US policy could raise prices. Because, and this is from the Saturday paper as they explain it, quote, if Australian PBS prices become a global benchmark, not just in Europe and the Asia Pacific, but for US health insurers, drug companies may simply stop offering Australia competitive deals, or worse, they may not offer the product at all. So, well done, good, not
That
so
is
good.
so evil.
It's
That is
so
so
evil.
fucking evil.
They're like, wait, but if we can't
Yeah,
make money
okay.
from it.
So sorry, just
Yeah.
to try and like make sure I've got this. So
Yeah.
America says
Yeah.
Americans will pay the same as the lowest price in the world.
Yes.
American drug companies therefore try to increase the price of medicines
In
in Australia
Australia.
because if Australia is the benchmark
Yes.
for how cheap those medicines can be.
Yeah.
So they're more expensive for everybody, including Americans, and everybody gets
Yeah.
fucked. And the pharmaceutical
Yeah.
pharmaceutical companies get to protect their profits.
Yeah,
right?
so they would love to just dismantle the PBS in Australia so that they could just charge more here and then charge more everywhere. The alternative, of course, is to simply abandon Australia as a market so that that reference point, that low benchmark, doesn't exist. And the problem for us, I guess, like where we are at risk is because Australia is a relatively small market. And so I guess it could make sense for some of these pharmaceutical companies to calculate that we're better off just not engaging with that system, or at least withholding our engagement as a negotiating tool to try and push the government to make some concessions, perhaps, on how the PBS operates.
Right, but just to reiterate, there are
Mm.
human beings who live in Australia who
Yes.
have bodies that have certain
Yes.
needs that can be addressed through certain medicines that
Yes.
are patented by evil pharmaceutical companies in the US. But they don't give a shit about that, okay? Even
They
though
don't give a shit
them
about
pulling
that.
out of that market will condemn some of
Yeah.
those people to death or to healthcare misery. Okay,
Yeah.
sure.
I mean, Australia import. That's the other thing. Like Australia's pharmaceutical manufacturing industry is quite small. We import about 90% of our medicines, so we certainly are reliant on global pharmaceutical manufacturers at the moment. But they, like, for a long time, particularly the US pharmaceutical industry has had Australia in its sights, has had the PBS in its sights, wants the PBS to be, undermined because of the way it works. So, quick refresher. I mean, Tom, I think you maybe spoke about this a little bit when we had the announcement pre-election on PBS caps. Labor announced lowering the cap on how much people can pay on PBS listed drugs. How does the PBS work in Australia?
Oh, God.
What year was it introduced? What government introduced it? It's in the show notes. Can you find it?
Yes, I do remember that it was Ben Chifley. It is one of the
It's
best
Chifley,
things that
yes.
that any Labor government in this country has ever introduced, and Ben Chifley is definitely one of the best in the post-war construction era in terms of expanding the welfare state and looking after people, which is fantastic. But my understanding is it's the Pharmaceuticals Benefits Scheme, which allows the government to negotiate for prices on certain medicines to make medicines as cheap as possible for Australian consumers.
Yes.
And,
And
then
they
certain drugs are listed on the PBS, which are
Yeah.
identified as the cheaper medicines. So not everything is on the PBS, but a lot of the big important stuff that a lot of people really desperately need is, and that's good because people should be paying nothing for medicines. But of course,
Yes.
while they have to pay something, it should be as cheap as humanly possible.
That's right. Yes. So the process is like it would have to get tested and approved through the Therapeutic Goods Administration, the TGA, and then the government, together with the Pharmaceutical Benefits Advisory Committee, PBAC, they kind of weigh up and decide whether listing a medicine on the PBS is worth it. Because how the PBS works is that the government can negotiate a lower price from the manufacturer because they're effectively buying in bulk for the whole country. And so the PBAC needs to decide, is it worth taxpayers' money to fund this based on the benefit that it will deliver to patients? One of the ways that this is just a kind of funny aside in looking at this is that they have to like quantify how much the potential years saved of someone's life, for example, is worth in dollars.
Oh, God.
And they actually use, like, it's kind of opaque, like the actual dollar figure that they're using to quantify this is not public information, but they use this, quote, quality adjusted life year to calculate how many years of a life it's likely to save, a medicine is likely to save, and the quality of those years as well. And then they use that to be like, this is how much we would pay for it. And then the manufacturer can kind of be like, we'll take it or leave it. We we do know though, related to this, when I was reading about this, that there is a government figure that is like the price that they believe your life is worth, effectively. It's the value that society places on reducing the risk of dying. Do you know this figure, how much your life is worth approximately?
Look, I don't know this figure. This came up a lot during the pandemic, right? And I think people were first
okay.
introduced to this concept, right? And this was constantly being cited by certain economists. And look, I know it sounds gross and disgusting. There's definitely a gross and disgusting version of it. But you do have to think, well, once you start talking
Sure.
about macroeconomics or you talk about these kind of issues, eventually
How
you
much
do
is
have to
life
come to some
worth?
kind of system in which there is some kind of dollar amount placed on certain things. That's kind of what economics is all about. So
Well, because
I know
they're
it
being
feels
like,
gross, but it's also
are they also taking into account, is it because the implication is that older years, for example, are worth less? Like, yeah, which is pretty it's interesting.
yes.
But if anyone's interested, your life is worth about $5.3 million from start to finish. And like each year is about $245,000. So anyway, that's just that's good to think
That'll
about.
vary depending on what you do. If you're a
Um,
comedian and podcaster, obviously that's
that's
maybe
right.
substantially more. If you're a
Yes.
green stuff, or not so much.
Yeah.
It also depends on like what
Yeah.
how much you're putting in, I suppose.
Yeah. Racial schedule. Yeah. Um, so the government goes, this is how much we're willing to pay for the medicine. Manufacturer can accept it or not. Fairly predictably, pharmaceutical companies do not love this. They do not love this at all. So it is a little surprise that back in March, the Pharmaceutical Research and Manufacturers of America, PHMA, wrote to the Trump administration, urging them to impose tariffs on Australian pharmaceutical exports, saying that the PBS is, quote, egregious and discriminatory towards the US pharmaceutical sector. Discriminatory.
I hate discrimination.
Their
so
human
it's-
rights are being infringed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's a liberal ideal to look after Big Pharma.
Hmm.
So, yes, like, it's interesting. I mean, we know just socially what a huge impact, what a huge influence, the pharmaceutical industry has on American politics. But the actual size of that is just wild when I start to look at it. So, for example, like, it makes the Australian political lobbying scene look pathetic.
Mm.
We still have pharmaceutical industry is still donating to both Labor and the Liberal parties. They donate a bit more to Labor at the moment, but that's in the order of, so 2022 to 2023, the disclosures from that year, $690,000 from the pharmaceutical industry to both the major parties. That is in addition to the Pharmacy Guild giving $355,000. That still puts them in the top 10 corporate political donors,
Oh,
I will
wow.
say, the Pharmacy Guild.
Yeah.
So they're big players in the scheme of Australian political donations. But how about, what was I going to ask you? Oh, yeah. How much do you think the PHRMA, this American pharmaceutical lobbying group, spent on lobbying in just the first quarter of 2024? 1 quarter of 2024.
I reckon an amount of money that would let you buy a shitload of Viagra, I'd say. That's my guess.
A lot of yes. How many Viagras could you buy?
Well, I mean, it must be
$9.6 million.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, that's a lot of money there, isn't it? Just on lobbying, for God's sakes. You've seen it. I mean, anyone who follows US politics, which I know is
Yes.
like you able, but anyone who in recent years who have seen
really.
anyone try to mount the Medicare for All campaign have pretty quickly been obliterated or silenced or marginalized or demonized or dismissed by both the industry itself and also often Democratic politicians who are largely funded by Big Pharma, who sort of said, no, we can't possibly have any kind of public system that is going to reduce the prices of both healthcare and the cost of medicines. That simply cannot happen. And yes, those people have massive dicks that they'd love to swing around and have a massive impact.
Big bank accounts. Yeah. Yeah, it's been pointed out, I think, a few times, the measure that is often used in reporting on this lobbying arrangement is like there's 100 senators in Congress and 435 members of the House at Capitol Hill. But the pharmaceutical industry has more than 1,800 lobbyists.
Jesus.
So, like, in the same place, there's more pharmaceutical industry lobbyists than there are members, which is it's really wild. There's another, some reporting illustrates just how close the industry, like the ties are between big pharma and politics in the US. This was, I can't actually remember where to attribute this, but this was from news reporting. Quote, the Peak Industry Group donated $1 million just to Trump's inauguration in January. And its chief executive, Stephen Ubell, dined with the president at Mar-a-Lago in December alongside Pfizer chief Albert Bourla and Eli Lilly chief David Ricks, both of whom are PHRMA board members. Other PHRMA member companies include Johnson & Johnson, Merck & Co., Bristol Myers Squibb, Novo Nordisk, Amgen, and CSL, former Commonwealth Serum Laboratories, formerly a publicly owned Australian pharmaceutical manufacturing company, is now on this board that is writing to the US administration and saying you need to you should dismantle Australia's quote-unquote discriminatory PBS. So well done, Labor. Thanks for privatising CSL back in whenever it was, 1994.
Yeah, really good move here. Yeah, so people would know, CSL has gone on to become a giant, like a pharmaceutical giant, a company that has, discontinued certain medicines that used to be produced in Australia because they weren't profitable enough, because as soon as you privatize, it's all about profits, so fuck making any medicines that aren't making enough money. They've relocated businesses from Australia, to offshore to people like Switzerland, I believe, because they have much better tax arrangements that is much better for the bottom line. So again, fuck Australian workers, fuck Australian industry. We don't care about that. No, the taxes are too high, so we'll be fucking off. And now actively lobbying to increase the prices of medicine in this country for Australians who want to buy medicines. Very cool stuff.
Yeah. So one of the arguments that the pharmaceutical industry makes, or the way that they tend to frame these pushes, is like you are hampering or whatever the word is, like by not rewarding our research and development by giving it a fair price, you're then not investing in development of better medicines.
Disincentivizing, that kind of thing?
There's a word that might be dampening anyway. But like the fact is that these companies spend often 2 or 3 times more on purely marketing, administration, and lobbying than they do on research and development.
Yes.
So for them to argue that, we need you to increase the money that you're paying us in order to cover the costs of our research and development is frankly nonsense. Like, it's bullshit. There is an argument, like in this statement that the PHRMA put to the US administration in March. They complain about 2 particular things. One is effectively like administrative delays in getting a medicine approved on the PBS. And the other is the comparative process that the board uses to determine whether it is whether the cost benefit is in favor of like putting it on the PBS. So the way that they do it is they will compare new medicines to the lowest cost comparator, as they call it. But that could include way older generic medicines. And so there is an argument that like maybe they have a point. I don't really know what to think about this. Like, part of me is like, they should compare it to the lowest cost alternative. But the argument is, well, that's like comparing an old Volkswagen to a new Mercedes, and then saying, well, you can't. The fact that the new Mercedes costs more means it's not worth it. You know what I mean?
Right.
No thoughts? Right.
I'm with you. Yes.
No. I just my question is like whether they have a point there, and on the like that's something that I guess, maybe has been raised as an opportunity for reform. In terms of the delays, this is something that the government is meant to be looking at. Like the health minister commissioned this review, reviewed the delays in processing for applications for a medicine to be listed on the PBS. There are these 50 recommendations that were delivered last year as a result of that review to overhaul the assessment system. It could include things like a bridging fund for innovative therapies. These are things that could happen without legislation, but they haven't necessarily been implemented. And so I feel like there are elements there that the government could address without dismantling the fundamental, I guess, foundations of the PBS, which is that Australians pay less for their medicines because the government does have a level of control over how much these companies can charge. But I suspect even though the industry and the lobby is presenting it as, oh, well, we just want them to address these unfair elements of the system or the elements that aren't working well, like delays in assessment that are delaying Australians' access to drugs, we want them to address that. I think the government could address those things and the lobby they would not be happy. They want to be able to charge more and profit more for providing medications.
Yeah, I mean, look, even if they're making some decent points, it's just like you coming from these particular people with their clear agenda, which is to maximize their profits and their hatred of this scheme because it reduces their profits. Like that, you just got to take that into consideration. And if other people want to make that argument, or if the government takes those decent points on and try to resolve them, that's fine. But no, never take your eye off the bigger game here, which is for them to try and make as much money as possible, profiting off people's sickness, right? That's what these companies are about. And the innovation point is like particularly galling from a company like CSL, for example, which had decades and decades of publicly funded research and innovation that they then are able to take private. So that's a bit bizarre. And also remember, a huge amount of research and innovation in the medical industry comes out of publicly funded universities, for God's sakes, right? Like publicly funded knowledge gathering and the way that, we research those kind of things are come out of the public sector anyway. So we deserve the fruits of that regardless. And remember that a whole bunch of medical innovations were gifted to the world's patent free, like the polio vaccine. The guy who came up with that was like, no, everybody, this belongs to humanity because this is good for everyone and people should be making shitloads of money out of it, for God's sakes.
Yeah. I guess the thing is, like, what do you think? What can we do? Like, what is the solution to this? If we rule out changes to the PBS or kind of fundamental changes to the PBS to give these companies what they want, and the US, given its very strong ties to the pharmaceutical lobby, if the government decides, we're going to include Australia in this most favored nation rule, do you think these companies will be like, okay, well, we're not going to deal with you guys, and we would then be fucked? What do we do?
Yeah, I mean, gosh, do you know not much about the specific medicines that are coming through that we import from the US that like would be a particular issue if we started to not getting them for cheaper prices?
I don't, but the fact that we import around 90%, I would say a lot.
from lots of different countries, but yes, America would obviously play a massive part of that. No, I mean, look, if I had to guess, I'd say I doubt it would fully come down to this. Again, Trump has been negotiating these or putting out these tariffs rather as negotiating tactics, and then proceeded to fold on them. So you end up with some kind of weird kind of compromise. But yeah, it'd be good if we could make more medicines here. That would be kind of cool.
Yes, that would be very cool. I agree. I mean, there are like domestic manufacturing. There are obviously things to consider. We still would need raw materials that we would then have to either develop in Australia or import from somewhere else. It's expensive, and ultimately, yes, there's an argument that it's like, well, you need to be able to cover the costs. But the question is perhaps then how much is the Australian government willing to invest in ensuring ongoing access to affordable medicines for Australians? How much is that worth? And I would say it's worth quite a lot. And it is worth remembering that, again, you look at CSL, which was privatized in 1994. It was sold for $299 million at the time. It now makes over $8 billion a year. Really good. Obviously, people would argue that's because they had the shackles of bureaucracy thrown off and they were able to be efficient and make money as a privatized vehicle. But even so, it's like we know that we can have a nationally owned pharmaceutical manufacturing company that did incredible things, early production of insulin, developed a tetanus vaccine. Like, it's done all these incredible things. We could have that again in Australia, and I feel like we should.
Nationalize CSL. Bring it back, baby.
Yeah.
We're taking it back. We're taking backsies.
Yeah, I will say I know that like a publicly owned pharmaceutical manufacturing company was part of the Queensland Greens platform back in 2020. Obviously, that was around the time of COVID, and there was a lot of attention on the fact that like these private pharmaceutical companies sometimes just don't even invest in development of vaccines because it's expensive and the profit motive isn't there. And so they're like, not worth it. And so you would have a public pharmaceutical company to invest in development of medicines that aren't necessarily profitable for the public good. Crazy, hey. But I don't know how broadly, like whether that's also been proposed at other states and territories as a policy. And I do feel as though I may be missing, and there are a lot of people in the Greens, obviously, who listen to this podcast. So if you know what the Greens have been saying about all this PBS stuff and the threat from the most favored nation policy and anything, like if the Greens have put forward a clear response to that, right in. Because I have to say, I feel like the Greens have been a little bit quiet on the medicines front, like not talking a lot about PBS during the election campaign, a little bit around making sure contraceptives are free and just general like support for the PBS, I guess. But feels like a space that, yeah, I would probably like to see a little bit more from the party on.
Look, I think, it'd be fair to say that the Labor Party will run very hard on. It's very important to them
Of course,
that cheaper medicines
they
are
own
a very,
the
very
issue.
big part. They own the issue. They talk about a lot during the election, and good on them, and that's fantastic. That's been, that's a good thing. PBS introduced by Labor government, thumbs up on this particular issue when it comes to Labor on many things. Of course, you would have to follow the logic a little bit further and go, okay, yes, if we think that healthcare is a human right, if you think that the profit motive shouldn't drive our decisions around the way that people access healthcare, well, let's expand that Medicare to dental, please, and mental health care as well. And let's stop accepting massive donations from the pharmaceutical industry, for God's sake, to influence public
and
policy.
private health insurance.
And private health insurance,
Yeah.
for fuck's sake. Yeah, like this is all a raw. If we really believe that healthcare is a human right, like if that's something we like to say, like we say housing is a human right, that has implications, really. And that should imply a transformative agenda and an approach to the intersection of money and health that would imply, yes, some massive reforms that need to be implemented across the board, really. So do that, please, Labor. Do that. And make those weight loss drugs cheaper, God damn it. Michelle and Andaraja.
Ananda Raja, yeah, come on. We've got to make the weight, but let's get back to the real issues here.
All right, well, following on the lobbying tip, I want to talk a bit more about lobbying because this week we got some super hot gossip, y'all. Listen up, girls. We got some hot gossip about the Defense Department. Wowza. I don't know. I'm trying to do some gossip or something. I don't know.
How old are you?
Yikes.
Spill the tea, sis.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
What's the tea from the Defense Department?
You know when you look at Richard Marles and you're thinking, who are people near him fucking? The Defense Minister, Richard Marles, Chief of Staff, has disclosed and managed a long-term de facto relationship with a lobbyist who works for a small firm representing several defense clients, including a subsidiary of an Israeli government-owned weapons manufacturer. Confirmation of the relationship comes as the Center for Public Integrity calls on the federal government to publish monthly disclosures of all interactions between lobbyists and senior staff advising ministers to improve trust and democracy and increase transparency. And I couldn't read those two paragraphs together without thinking, yes, we want all the details of these interactions.
Yes. Release like 29 March, 3 kisses, 2 above pants actions, 3 below shirt. Like,
did doggy style last night. Pretty sexy stuff, pretty hot. In your time working in politics, have you seen a lot of this? Have you seen people in the political class and lobbyists around the Queensland Parliament, smooching and sucking and fucking?
I am in the Greens, so not seeing a lot of this. But like, but also, yeah. Like, I know it's a thing. I have to say, I don't have the gossip bug. I sometimes get pieces of information from other people who are better at watching for this stuff and will like see a picture of people together and be like, that's that person who works for that firm. But yeah, like it's all the same machine. They're all the same thing. The lobby, like, there is no distinction between the lobbying firms and the major parties, effectively. Like,
Mm.
yeah.
On a day-to-day basis, what does it look like? A lobbyist a big part of your life when you're working in like Michael's office or just working in state politics much at all? Or do they come across your desk or are involved in your life that much?
Well, I wouldn't disclose details of my work, of course, Queensland Parliamentary Service, if you're listening. But I would say, again, like, working for a Greens MP, the few times that we have been contacted by a lobbying firm, it is so jarring. It's just so bizarre. Like, we're like, wait, what are you why are you lost? Like, and it makes me instantly inclined to just ignore them, because I'm like, talk to us yourself if you want to talk to us. And we probably don't want to talk to you anyway. So there's that. But
Right.
yeah, I know that, like, this is the other thing, is there is if you want to get into the technical language of it, like, what is considered lobbying legally and what needs to be disclosed as lobbying and registered as lobbying is a far cry from what people would actually consider generally to be lobbying. Like, there can be a developer who sits down and has lunch with the Premier and discusses a development that they're proposing in Queensland. Together, they could, and the meeting could have been arranged by someone who is a lobbyist, but like,
Right.
that's not considered lobbying because there's some loophole. So that's what it looks like. A lot of it is completely undercover. A lot of it's completely in the dark, undisclosed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, we'll come to this in a moment, but my understanding is, yes, there are companies that, like, we are a lobbying firm, we do lobbying, and so we have to register as a
Yes.
lobbyist. But
Yeah.
a company could have people employed
Yes.
within their company whose entire job is to influence politics and
Yes.
policy as much as possible, who aren't technically lobbyists because they work for this particular company. Is that right?
Yeah. Not a registered lobbyist, so it doesn't matter. Yeah. Yeah.
Jesus.
And of course, we all know, like, the Greens talk a lot about the quote unquote revolving door, the fact that, like, it's, the best job for a politician leaving politics is to go work across the street for a lobbying firm, or as a lobbyist, because they literally just go back to their mates and go, hey, you know me.
Remember me? Yeah.
These guys are good. They're good value. Yeah. Remember when I helped you in that factional wrangling dispute, like, to get the votes? Remember that? Maybe you should approve this project, and that's legal, which is really good.
Remember the photos and videos that I have of you doing certain things? Maybe you should help me out here.
Yeah. Remember that party? Remember that ball?
The details of this particular incident, and this incident is, a bit whatever, but leads to a bigger conversation about the state of lobbying and lobbyists in our politics, I think. But in this particular case, Marles' chief of staff is Lucian Wells, and he disclosed an ongoing de facto relationship with lobbyist Sasha Fenton, who was one of 4 registered lobbyists for the Canberra-based firm Precision Public Affairs. What do we think of that name? I think it's great.
I just God.
Precision Public Affairs. Incredible to have a name with precision in it that is incredibly vague, and, like, I have no idea what the fuck you do.
Very vague. Yeah, absolutely no precision in it whatsoever.
Precision Public Affairs represents defense clients that have secured lucrative contacts with the federal government. Now, legal disclaimer, there is no suggestion, we're not saying anything here about Fenton or Wells breaching any rules or ethical obligations or improperly sharing any government information that could have assisted Precision's clients, right? I'm not saying that. There's absolutely no evidence on that front whatsoever. But people have noted this. It is a story because it does look a little bit weird, right? It doesn't look great. The chief of staff of the defense ministers is in a de facto relationship with someone who lobbies. It was part of a lobbying firm that represents clients that benefit from very lucrative defense contracts. Doesn't look great, right?
Doesn't look great at all. Like, but I mean, to me, it's less a story about like, oh, we've uncovered this potentially unethical or illegal practice. It's more just like, here is evidence that not to, that the government is literally in bed with arms manufacturers. Ha ha ha.
That is that is funny. Yes, one of the manufacturers in particular is Raphael Australia Pty Limited. This is one of Precision's clients, an Australian subsidiary that is wholly owned by Raphael Advanced Defense Systems, which is a large Israeli state-owned weapons manufacturer. Raphael Advanced Defense Systems, they make missiles, drones, and other weapon systems for the Israeli military, which, I don't know if you guys follow the news, but has recently been involved in what does appear to be a genocide. So, not great. Not really great. But anyway, don't worry, everyone. If you're worried about like conflicts of interest or anything like that, apparently it's all fine. Guardian Australia was told probity mechanisms are put in place to manage and mitigate any private interests that may give rise to a perception of conflict or compromise. These can include staff removing themselves from email chains, meetings, or relevant decisions. Precision's founder and managing director, Sarah Cullens, said the firm was committed to upholding the highest standards of integrity and operates in full compliance with all relevant requirements, including applicable federal and state lobbying codes of conduct. Precision declined to state whether Fenton had been precluded from lobbying for defense industry clients, given the de facto relationship. The firm has several other health and not-for-profit clients. The Centre for Public Integrity's disclosure recommendation, if adopted, would have revealed this information. So the Centre for Public Integrity puts out this sort of statement, these suggestions and recommendations this week, saying that you would have to disclose that kind of information, that once this de facto relationship is disclosed, they would have to disclose whether or not that particular person has been removed from any defense industry-related lobbying that's been going on.
Seems reasonable.
Seems pretty reasonable for the Centre there, but of course it's just a recommendation that hasn't exactly been taken on. I guess the big question I want to get to is there any actual fucking legitimate argument for the existence of lobbyists in our politics whatsoever? Lobbyists, do we need them? Emerald Moon, over to you.
Do we need them? No. Yeah. Is there an argument that it's like that they're intended to? Because how they would sell themselves, of course, is that we simplify the complex processes of navigating, bureaucracy, and we understand the systems, and so we can assist you, perhaps a small to medium enterprise or a startup who's innovating and just like want to contribute to the Australian economy and society. We enable you to demonstrate that value, that potential value to the Australian government, and thereby we everyone wins because we get good projects approved and we can just smooth the processes. Of course, that's not the way it fucking works at all. It just means that it's the same powerful players who are unable to entrench like thicker and thicker relationships between the biggest corporations in the country and political decision makers, right?
Yes, when I meant we the people, we the goddamn Australian people is what
We
I
the
meant.
people.
Right. I would love someone to put this to in these conversations around how we regulate lobbying and stuff. Like, someone should be asked the question, why is it good to have lobbyists in Canberra? Because it seems to me their very existence is designed to undermine and thwart the process of democracy. Politicians' job is to represent people, to take in information. If they're considering laws that there are so many people employed whose job it is to provide advice and information from an unbiased point of view, right? From an independent point of view, to provide information and policy recommendations. People that aren't being paid by massive companies that will be affected by the public policy in question. And that's the kind of information that politicians should be listening to. Any lobbyist sitting down with a politician is just going to be there to try and influence them in the interests of their company's bottom line. That's fucking it, right?
Well, yes, I guess we should put the disclaimer that there are lobbyists who work for non-profit causes or organizations. Like, that is also lobbying, but it's probably a much less. Yeah, it is. It does raise the question because it's like probably the government would like it just listens to these guys anyway, regardless of whether they're paid as lobbyists, and they're not listening to the will of the people anyway. And so does it really make a difference what you guys are lobbying for at all? But I guess, hey, it's jobs, you know.
It's an employment program. That's good. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't, again, my main experience is from movies and TVs about how
Movie
it actually
shows.
sort of, movie shows, how it all works. I don't know why you would sit down with a meeting with a lobbyist. Don't you know everything a lobbyist has got to tell you before you meet with them, which is like, don't do the thing that's going to negatively affect our company. Do the thing that will, expand our profits and our
Yeah.
ability to increase our business. It just seems like a waste of time to me. It's like, oh, the guy from
For the
Woodside is here. I
government?
wonder what he's going to say. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But they would be like, oh, the guy from Woodside is here, like, just in time. We needed to put out another media release about why it's good to open up new gas wells. Like,
Yes.
they're just an extension of the Labor Party. Like, I can't remember who coined this term, but like, as we say in Queensland, Labor being a wholly owned subsidiary of Santos. It's like they're the same thing. So they need them as much as they need more staffers.
So then there's all this question about, okay, yeah, the lobbying industry sucks and the regulation of it sucks. And so what are we going to do about it? Last month, there was a story about how the Greens and prominent crossbenchers are going to push Labor to toughen regulation of political lobbying, promising to use that balance of power to increase transparency and probity around vested interests with access in Canberra. Larissa Waters says strengthening the federal lobbyist register and improving rules on access to ministers and government department heads was a missed opportunity from the last parliament. There's very core regulation of lobbyists and access to politicians by lobbyists and vested interests, she said. They still walk the halls essentially with the red carpet rolled out for them. They have an access level that ordinary Australians don't have, so there's unfinished business there with the regulation of lobbying. It's really weak and effectively non-existent. Now, again, all this I kind of agree with, I suppose, but again, I'm just like regulating this presence of people that I don't think should exist. It just seems a little bit... yeah, it seems like you're missing the main game there, really. Because, yeah, when you sort of talk about the only reason lobbyists exist is because wealthy people, okay, like corporate lobbyists, the ones working for companies that
Sure.
yes, that are trying to make a profit out of this stuff. Yeah. The only reason they exist and they're in there is because, of course, yes, everybody else can't afford to employ full-time staff to lobby for their vested interests and spend a full-time job annoying politicians and pressuring them to write the laws correctly so that their interests are served, Like, it's just a completely unequal say. So no matter what people vote for, they've got to compete against the corporate influence with these lobbyist fucks.
Yeah. I will say it's okay. I mean, it's hard because the definition of lobbying is not only legally wobbly and difficult, but like semantically, like what is lobbying? It's kind of just campaigning in a way. And so there is an argument, I suppose.
But that's fine. Yes, publicly campaigning, totally fine. Closed door meetings between MP and lobbyist, no good. Or make it all.
But then you need a
public,
way.
for
You need a
God's
way to regulate it.
Right.
So like you need if you're going to like if you want it to be open door, if you want it to be transparent, then you need to have regulations in place that say what does that transparency look like, what are the requirements, and in order for you to say this is what needs to be disclosed and when, you need to define what lobbying is and what a lobbyist is, and that is difficult. And so like it is kind of I do understand it as a regulatory problem where it's like, do we want every MP, for example, to have to disclose the contents of and details of every meeting that they have with a constituent who might present and go, I've been really struggling to access, for example, gender affirming care for my child, and that's why I think that this system needs to be improved. Like, in a way, that's lobbying. Like, but it's not covered under this this system. And I don't know whether it should be, but I do know that yes, like even in the tight definition of like the way that we define and regulate lobbying right now, where it is intended to capture that kind of more that corporate political lobbying and funded lobbying, that in itself isn't doing what it says it does, isn't doing what Australians would expect it to.
Yeah. A parliamentary inquiry report last year showed the register of lobbyists administered by the Attorney General's Department captured only a small slice of the paid influence industry operating around federal parliament, as only paid third-party lobbyists are required to register, and not in-house lobbyists employed by corporations. As much as 80% of the industry is not required to adhere to transparency rules. So, I mean, that is fucked.
Yeah, no, that's just like arbitrary bullshit. Yeah. It's stupid.
So the Teals are on board regulating as well. Allegra Spender, David Pocock. Again, they're all about more transparency. Pocock cited Labor's capitulation on gambling reform as evidence of the influence of lobbyists. But again, his solution. He's drafted legislation designed to improve the rules around lobbying and has pledged to push for reform. His bill would require lobbyists to give quarterly updates on their work, including detailing which MPs and senior advisors they have held talks with. I mean, I don't know. More reports and information about the corruption. It's like, I don't know. I guess I'm just cynical about it because we know how much these massive companies are donating directly to the political parties. Like, this is all, and even those disclosure laws are bullshit and are way too late, as we've discussed. But again, people just know. They know it's happening. Is the documentation of it happening actually going to change it? Or would serious reform actually being saying, no, you can't actually have MPs sit down with people who are paid to influence them on behalf of a corporation? That's actually bad.
I mean, the High Court says we can't do that, right? Because, like, I think that would be a pretty clear impediment of implied right to freedom of political communication. That, like, they have a right to lobby effectively. I do think, but yeah, like, it's true, like, the disclosure requirements, it is just so hard because it isn't as simple as the legislation would like it to be, where you have people who are like professional lobbyists and they set up 1 or 2 clear meetings that are like recorded and minuted and they meet with the minister, and that's how it works. Like, it is text messages, it is like social connections, it is, all of those things, like, and how do you report that? Which is where I think, like, the second part of what the Greens are proposing for some time, and it looks like Pocock is also proposing, is around jamming that revolving door. So banning former ministers and senior officials from lobbying in their area of experience, i.e. like the ministry that they would have held, for example, for 3 years. I think the Greens have said 5 in the past.
Right. Yeah. Yep. I mean, that's good. And yes, also the National Anti-Corruption Commission would have powers to investigate alleged rule breaches. Look, you're probably right, and I'm crazy, but I say drain the fucking swamp. I say kick them all out of Canberra, re-employ them somewhere else, find some new jobs program for them, or at least just recognize the role. And I would love to see more, particularly Labor politicians, be forced to justify the continued existence of lobbyists in our parliamentary system.
Forced to justify their sex lives too.
Lobbyists don't deserve sex or love.
Especially if you're fucking an arms dealer. If you're fucking an arms dealer, I can shame you. That's the law.
That is not a kink that we will allow. Yeah.
No.
Love is a battlefield.
Well, that's it for this week's show. Thank you, dear friends, for listening. If you liked it, please leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, or if you're listening now, or tell a friend to listen to Serious Danger to understand the real green left perspective on Australian politics, and comedy and life and love and sex and religion and all of these things and more. Look, you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Serious Danger AU. Support the show by chipping in just $3 a month on Patreon. Patreon.com/Serious Danger AU. Find all our links, etc. at seriousdangerpod.com.
Au revoir, as they say here in Montreal.
I love you like a Labor Chief of Staff loves an arms manufacturer that's dealing with the IDF. Mwah.
Very sweet. Bye-bye.
Serious Danger Australia.